Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, what else do the Falcons do at quarterback? Who has the second most pressure to step up for the Atlanta Falcons? And we'll preview the Royal Rumble. It's all next. Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. We ask you to head to YouTube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to grow to 6,000 folks on our YouTube page. Be a part of the growing community. We are free and available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify. Check us out on all of your favorite platforms. Also, too, Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, we are available on those platforms as well. And then give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. So when we talk about the quarterback position for the Atlanta Falcons, and I know there's a segment of the population that wants to trade for Lamar Jackson. There's a segment of the population that doesn't want to trade for Lamar Jackson. There's a segment of the population that wants to roll with Desmond Ridder. And I get all that. And no matter what your proclivities are, first off, I don't think there's any scenario where I don't think that they're going to get involved in the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. And, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't, whatever like that. I just think the cost is too high personally. But I also don't believe that Lamar Jackson's actually going to be available. Like I fully anticipate that he's going to be in a Ravens uniform next year. And it may not be on a long-term deal, but it may be on the franchise tag that they give him. So I don't believe that he's as available as some people want to believe. So at this point, what else do the Falcons do at the quarterback position? So if we believe that they roll with Desmond Ridder, okay, and he's your starter, what else do you do? Okay. So the crop of free agent quarterbacks, when you look at it is, a mixed bag. Tom Brady's a free agent, maybe Aaron Rodgers becomes a free agent or whatever. There's all kinds of guys that are all over the board. Jimmy Garoppolo would probably cost too much money. There are a couple of names that I am intrigued by because when you have the young quarterback, you always want to have a veteran backup, right? If you have a young starter, you get a veteran backup, okay? If you have the veteran quarterback, you can afford to have a young guy starting. When Matt Ryan was early in his career, it was Matt Schaub and Chris Redman backing him up. But then as time moved on and, Matt was established in the league, it could be guys like Kurt Benkert, okay? So here's a couple of names that, again, these aren't exciting. They're not supposed to be exciting, but if you have a situation where you had to make a couple of two starts, whatever like that, you feel like you wouldn't completely fall off a cliff. Like, for instance, with Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield, okay, you feel like you start falling off a cliff. At least I do. I think you start falling off a cliff. One name that kind of is intriguing is Jacoby Brissett, who obviously was the Browns starter last year until Deshaun Watson got off of his suspension and things like that. So Jacoby Brissett is an interesting name. He made $4.65 million last year. And anytime you're talking about a veteran quarterback, you're going to have to be willing to allocate some dollars for them. Like, they're not playing on $1 million contract. I don't care how much of a bum you are in the league. They're going to cost you $4, $5, $6, $7 million for a backup quarterback. Yeah, maybe that's a lot to allocate, but when your quarterback that's starting is on a rookie deal and he's got a fish heads and rice contract, it isn't that big of a deal. And remember, we all brag about how the Falcons have the second most cap space and all that kind of stuff. All right. So I am intrigued by Jacoby Brissett that he could come in and one of the things I'll say about Brissett, the Browns didn't really take a step backward because Jacoby Brissett was their starting quarterback. Jacoby Brissett played really well at times, but their defense was not very good at times, even though they have a great pass rush. Their secondary gets torched at times, and their head coach, I think, is a disaster. Stefanski's a disaster. I don't think he's a very good head coach, but that's a them problem and all that kind of stuff. But I am intrigued by Jacoby Brissett. That's a name that if you could get him, and again, maybe he cost you $4 or $5 million to bring in, because I do think that Geno Smith and some guys like that are going to find landing spots. Certainly you think that Seattle would bring Geno Smith back. Some of the other names that are on this list, Mason Rudolph, Case Keenum, they don't excite me as much. Maybe Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who could, fill in. Maybe a CJ Beathard. I am intrigued by one other name on here that, if he had to start, wouldn't fall off a cliff. But I wonder if there is going to be some marketplace for Tyler Heinicke. Now, look, he'd be coming back home, right? Or Taylor Heinicke, I should say. But Taylor Heinicke is a kid that's from Collins Hill High School, kind of over in the Swanee, Norcross area. Certainly has done some good things. And, a couple of years ago, he beat the Falcons, but certainly has done some good things in the NFL. And when he started, he's been sort of capable. Now, maybe there's a marketplace for him. Maybe that, somebody looks at him as potentially being a starting quarterback. But I wouldn't mind a guy to come in here as a veteran and sort of push Desmond Ridder a little bit, where there's a little bit of doubt. Because I don't think, look, I like Desmond Ridder a lot, and he was my favorite draft pick of this past year. But I don't think Desmond Ridder has earned the right to just say that he's the starting quarterback right out of the gate and you just plug him into that role. I do believe in some competition. And if you had a Taylor Heinicke or a Jacoby Brissett, and look, again, I'm not saying that, it's a Marcus Mariota situation, but a veteran that could at least push, Desmond Ridder for maybe being the starter, or maybe, put a little bit of questions in there to maybe make him work harder. Now, when it comes to the draft, I'm certainly not opposed to drafting a quarterback. Okay. Now, if we're not going to be in the CJ Stroud business, which would require your 8th pick of the draft, okay, couple of names that are intriguing that are probably day 3 guys would be obviously Hendon Hooker. He's a guy that obviously had a monster season for Tennessee and then was injured at the very end of the year. But I like Hendon Hooker a lot, and I think he's a winner. He's got the size and things like that. He's certainly a mobile quarterback that can get out of the pocket. Pro Football Focus says that Hooker ticks every single physical box an NFL evaluator could want. Strong arm, good size, light on his feet, and a threat as a runner. We've also seen a real year of growth from him with his passing grade and things like that. So I would be in the mindset that if you could get Hendon Hooker as a day 3 guy, that I would be willing to roll the dice on that. Now, here's another guy that I like him, and he was productive in college. He doesn't measure up as far as size and things like that, but Jake Haener out of Fresno State. Now, he's 6'1", 200 pounds, so he's not the smallest guy in the world, and he has had some injuries, but he's a fearless quarterback. He's a guy that can throw it around. He's got good arm strength for his size. He's not one of those guys that is afraid to sling it in there. So, if you're looking for a guy that isn't CJ Stroud and a first round type of quarterback, I wouldn't mind either Hendon Hooker or Jake Haener. And I think if you get a Desmond Ridder with, a Taylor Heinicke or, a Jacoby Brissett to push him a little bit, and then, you draft another young quarterback, and maybe you stash him on the practice squad, I'd be okay with that situation. But I don't think it's a job that you just give it to Desmond Ridder because he's the heir apparent. I want to see somebody who kind of pushes him for that spot, pushes him for that job, and creates some competition there. And if Desmond Ridder fails, then he fails. If he succeeds and he grabs the job, then that's a good thing. I'm certainly rooting for Desmond Ridder, but I'm not in the Lamar Jackson camp, and I'm not rolling the dice on everything that it would take to possibly get Lamar Jackson. All right, I want to talk about my friends over at FanDuel. Listen, the NFL playoffs are here, right? We're really excited about our new betting partner for Locked On, FanDuel. It's the #1 sports book in America. So if you're new to FanDuel, we've got a really good deal for you. So if you go to FanDuel.com/locked on, FanDuel.com/locked on, LOCKEDON, and you sign up today, with your first $5 bet that you make, you're going to get $150 in free bets guaranteed. So you bet 5, and then FanDuel's going to give you $150 in free bets guaranteed. FanDuel is safe. It's a super easy and secure app to use, and they have all of your favorite bets, from money lines to point spreads to player props. Everything that you can get involved in is over at FanDuel. So listen, don't miss out. Sign up today, FanDuel.com/locked on, LOCKEDON. And when you place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $150 free in bets, win or lose. And we certainly hope that you win some money out of all of this, but you'll get it either way, $150 with your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sports book of the NFL. So another thing about the Atlanta Falcons is when we start looking at who has the most pressure to step up their game, I certainly think Desmond Ridder has the most pressure on him to become either a competent quarterback or, certainly, potentially the starting quarterback for a full season. I think that there is pressure on him. But who is the number 2 guy? Who's the number 2 guy for the Atlanta Falcons? I think it's Arnold Ebiketie. Now, looking at Arnold Ebiketie's grade, it was a 64.5 Pro Football Focus grade. Arnold Ebiketie was listed as one of the guys that is an early breakout candidate for the Atlanta Falcons. Pro Football Focus had this write-up about Ebiketie. Atlanta's offensive players have already broken out. That's obviously Tyler Algier, Drake London, or at least we know what they're capable of with a real quarterback. But the defense is lacking players that are primed for success. Ebiketie managed 28 pressures across 303 pass rushing snaps in his rookie season, and he tallied 14 defensive stops on the year. His best game came in his first start. And remember, I was screaming about for the end of the year about let's start Ebiketie, like sit Ogundeji and get Ebiketie in. Well, it turned out that his best game was the game that he started in. They say that there's not much data that says that Ebiketie is a likely breakout candidate, but he is a talented prospect, so it is possible. Now, Ebiketie finished the year with 2.5 sacks for the Atlanta Falcons, which, again, that was third on the team. Lorenzo Carter, Grady Jarrett were the 2 guys that had more. But we did invest a second-round pick in Ebiketie. And if there's a guy that needs to have that step-up type season, because I would anticipate that he's going to start the year. Like, he's going to be your starter all the way through. Whether Lorenzo Carter's on the other side or not, they re-sign him. Certainly Ogundeji doesn't need to start anymore, okay? That's a real stopgap, and maybe he did a couple things against the run, but he's a dreadful pass rusher, and he doesn't need to be a starting defensive player in the NFL. Let's put it that way. He shouldn't start at the edge, okay? He's a little bit better than Steven Means, but not a whole lot better. All right. So Ebiketie, I think, is a guy that could he break out? Could he have a productive season? Yeah. But I think really the thing with Ebiketie is I think you have to have somebody pretty good on the other side of him. It feels like if defenses can focus on him and take him away, and we don't have that complementary piece that goes along with it. And I'm not talking about a Lorenzo Carter. I'm not talking about a guy like that who, yes, he did some good things and all that kind of stuff, but he's not a pure pass rusher. He's not a guy that's a pure pass rusher. I'm talking about somebody on second and third down whose mission in life is to get to the quarterback, right? Who could complement what Ebiketie does. And I don't think he had a bad season, but certainly there's a lot of pressure for him because look, I don't know what D'Angelo Malone is going to be. That was their third round pick. I don't know that he's more than a rotational guy. I don't know that he's, yeah. And we had some high hopes and expectations for what these guys were and what they were going to be out there. And I don't know that D'Angelo Malone is more than a rotational guy. Maybe he could do some things, but if, with all due respect, if I could get D'Angelo Malone in a rotation and he could come up with 4 or 5 sacks, I'd take that. I'd take that. But Ebiketie is a guy who, was a very productive player at Penn State. He was a really good pass rusher there. And you did spend a second round pick, which certainly is supposed to be a starter for a number of years in the NFL. And, you traded up to go get, I think it was, you traded up to go get Ebiketie, and you didn't give up much for it. But I mean, you wanted to go get Ebiketie because of his pass rush ability. And I would still say, look, staying the course, finding a pass rusher at number 8 to put on the other side of Ebiketie. And if I could get a pass rusher at 8 and I could have Ebiketie out there, okay, then maybe we can do some stuff. Maybe we can figure out a way to be a better sack team. And then I add in a Justin Houston who can be a third down specialist and go pick me up, a handful of sacks. I always say that the number to reach is 40 sacks. The number that you have to hit is 40 sacks. To be a playoff caliber defense, to be a team that can, get themselves into the playoff picture, you have to be a 40 sack defense. Now, the exception to that is if you have Tom Brady and you have the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. But outside of that, you need to be a 40 sack defense. It's not a surprise that the two teams that are home in the AFC and NFC championship game, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, also lead the NFL in sacks. They're 1-2 in the NFL in sacks. So you've got to get that number to 40. And if I can have Ebiketie be a guy, even if he doesn't develop himself into a 12, 15 sack guy, would we love that? Yes. I don't see that kind of jump. It's one of those things that when you come into the league and, the top tier guys come into the league right away sacking the quarterback. The Myles Garrett's, the Bosa, Khalil Mack, Von Miller. Those guys, when they come into the league, they immediately start picking up, accumulation numbers of sacks. Okay. 2.5 sacks is okay, but there is room for growth. But I do think that Ebiketie, whoever the defensive coordinator is going to be, and listen, with Steve Wilks now on the marketplace, that's another guy who is certainly an aggressive, guy defensively. He likes to get after the quarterback. I certainly think that an aggressive style defensive coordinator could really benefit Ebiketie. And starting, it was way past time for Ebiketie to get some more starts. And the fact that he only got one start, I don't know. Again, there's this, the Dean Pease thing is, maybe we don't start some of our rookies and we're not going to start them till they're ready and things like that. But if you got a guy that's just got some natural talent, turn him loose and see what he can do. And then find out, listen, more than you find out what all of his upside is, you find out what all of his flaws and warts are. You find out all of the bad first, that you can identify that and fix that, besides just what your ceiling is going to be. But I think Ebiketie, next to Desmond Ridder, has the most to prove this upcoming season. That they need Ebiketie to be, even if it's just 7, 8, 9 sacks, and he's not that 12 to 15 sack kind of guy, they need a big step up for him. Because if not, if Ebiketie can't be more than, 3, 4, 5 sacks, this team is going to have to way overspend, and they're going to have to tie up a bunch of money in free agency or use really high draft capital. And, whether it's you sign a big time pass rusher, or you spend, your highest amount of draft capital on that guy. You got to have Ebiketie come up and step up and be a part of all of this. So I think Ebiketie has the second most to prove for this Falcons team. All right, we want to mention to you to make Locked On Sports Today your second listen every day besides Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. So let's talk about the Royal Rumble. It's coming up tomorrow, the premium live event for WWE. And look, I'll say that next to WrestleMania, this is my second favorite pay-per-view of the year. I'm a big fan of the Royal Rumble match itself. I'm a big fan of the Women's Royal Rumble. Like there's been, over the last few years, the Women's Royal Rumble has gotten better. The Becky Lynch in 2019 was a magnificent Royal Rumble. The way that was all booked and put together, that was a fantastic main event for Becky Lynch. So I'm both for the men's and the women's Royal Rumble. So this is how I would book it all. Okay. I don't think The Rock is coming back to WrestleMania. So I think that's off the table. That's out. He's not wrestling Roman Reigns. I think that's fantasy booking and things like that. I also don't think that they're going to do Steve Austin versus Roman Reigns, and there's a lot of reasons. I mean, one is Steve can't really take bumps. I mean, you saw that match against Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens did all the bumping. Steve can't take bumps. He can't take suplexes and different things like that. That's why he would never wrestle Brock Lesnar. As much as that has been fantasy booked, Lesnar coming back to wrestle Steve Austin at WrestleMania, it's not reality. Austin just can't take those kinds of bumps anymore with his neck and, spinal problems and everything that he's had. That's why he retired at WrestleMania 19. That's why he had to retire earlier, probably 5 or 6 years earlier than what he really planned on because of all the injuries that he accumulated. And then Owen in 97 at SummerSlam when he dropped him on his head, like the accumulation of all the injuries doesn't make it to where he can't really take bumps anymore. So here's what I've got for the Royal Rumble. I'll get to the men's side of it, okay? I get Cody Rhodes to win the thing. He's the most over baby face in the company right now. All the training video and the recovery packages and all of those video vignettes that they've put together over these last few weeks have been fantastic. And we've now got the answer that he's going to be back at the Rumble. I let Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble. And I have it where if Brock is in the Royal Rumble, and I don't know if Brock is officially in the Rumble, but I have Brock, I have Sami Zayn, and I have Drew McIntyre along with Cody Rhodes. That's the four people for the last four of the Royal Rumble. And the last four of the Royal Rumble is typically one of those things where it's some of the guys you want to push or some of your top tier guys, right? In 98, when it was Rock and Austin and those guys, those were the finalists for the Royal Rumble. But your last four in the Rumble should be Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar, if he's in the Rumble, Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes. I find a way to have Drew McIntyre eliminate Brock Lesnar, and then maybe we get that kind of matchup again from WrestleMania a few years ago, when he became Drew McIntyre became the champion. Find a way maybe to mix those guys up. But then I have Cody eliminate Sami Zayn, who's literally the most over guy in the promotion right now. I have Cody throw him out of the ring. And then Roman, obviously he's coming for Roman because he's got all the belts, okay? But then Roman runs him through a gauntlet. And I have on Raw and at the one pay-per-view that they have in between, which is Elimination Chamber, okay? That's a late February pay-per-view. That's the only pay-per-view between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. They don't do another pay-per-view right before WrestleMania, because WrestleMania will be early April, and I think it's basically late February when they have Elimination Chamber. Okay, I run Cody Rhodes through the gauntlet. I haven't beat Solo Sikoa. I haven't beat the Usos individually. I haven't beat everybody that's in the bloodline before he gets a chance to get a hold of Roman. And at the pay-per-view in between Elimination Chamber, I have him wrestle Sami Zayn and beat Sami Zayn. And now he's on a winning streak. Now he's at the top of the mountain. And now you've got your baby face, and the WWE has always been a baby face territory, whether it's Bruno, Backlund, Hogan, Warrior. It's always been a baby face territory. You have your white hot baby face leading into Roman, and I put the belt on Cody Rhodes. That's the guy who should beat Roman. If Roman's going to lose to somebody, he needs to lose to Cody Rhodes. So I have Cody win the Rumble, run through all of the bloodline leading up to WrestleMania, and then he beats Roman for the belt. Now, on the women's side, this has got to be Rhea Ripley's year, right? It was not long ago that Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair came out and said that they want to be the modern day Rock and Austin, okay? And that's very ambitious, but certainly they are two of the premier performers in all of WWE. So I certainly would have Rhea Ripley win the Women's Royal Rumble, and then she challenges Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. And that'll be a hell of a match, because let's face it, we've gone through Becky and we've gone through Charlotte and all that. There needs to be some new blood and some new infusion of the women's division, and not that there's anything wrong with Becky and Charlotte. They're the top of the food chain, but you want to see somebody get elevated up to that point. And you have a natural angle. Bianca Belair is, the ultimate babyface, with Judgment Day. Rhea Ripley's the ultimate heel. So you get your babyface and heel matchup. And that would be a hell of a matchup. And they want to put on a spectacle for everybody. So I have Rhea win the Women's Royal Rumble. She challenges Bianca Belair. And I'd probably put the belt on Rhea Ripley. I probably put the belt on her and let Becky and Charlotte and Bianca, I let them all chase Rhea Ripley, because she's, she looks like a movie star. So I'll take Rhea Ripley to win the Women's Royal Rumble. I'll take Cody Rhodes to win the Men's Royal Rumble. It's going to be a fascinating pay-per-view. And listen, it's always one of my favorites out there. So I always have a lot of fun watching both of the Rumble matches. All right, we thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports today and make it your second listen. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your favorite podcast from. We ask you to head over to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button, be a part of our community. We're trying to grow to 6,000 people. Leave us a comment. We're also free and available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Spotify, wherever you get your favorites from, check us out there. Apple, wherever you get your favorite podcast platforms from, check us out there. Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, we are also available on those platforms to download and check us out there. And then give me a follow at JMCH316 on my personal Twitter page. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll recap on Monday, NFC and AFC championship games. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.